the world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, the world's greatest radio. And you are in touch with the Compensatory Concept. I'm the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Thank you for tuning in to arguably the best 2 hours of radio on the planet, according to my unofficial statistics. Emails, Gmails, phone calls, letters of concern. A lot of people around the world listen to these 2 hours, so they are very precious, and we thank you. We are on every Wednesday from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. That is Eastern time, according to the, as Mr. Fuller would call it, the Northwestern Hemisphere. We've been trained to call it the United States, but that's when we are on. 2 hours, 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. And Mr. Fuller and I discuss his books, and we invite your questions, and I will give you the numbers or the contact points that you can call and get in, but don't call right now. Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, which is a compensatory counter-racist code. You may get the new and revised expanded edition by going to producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com. And I think 3 or 4 times during today's programming, we will have Mr. Fuller speak about that and the latest updates on that information. I think that's all the house cleaning that I have to do this morning. Hopefully that you can hear us real well. If not, hit the refresh button, so I am told, and the programming should come up. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and this being this Wednesday, I think it is the last Wednesday in the month of September. How go you today?
I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Very good. Okay, let's start off with this. There's been several events in the news, not only here in the United States, or as you refer to, the Northwestern Hemisphere. There's been things going on all over, but what caught your eye, or emails or Gmails, that you would like to open up today's discussion with?
Well, someone emailed me a question. What should the codified response be to the upcoming election here in the Northwestern Hemisphere? And basically, I think you should vote what you believe to be the best of a shaky situation. That's the best way that I can put it. At the very best, the situation for non-white people is going to be extremely shaky. At very best, there's not going to be any major breakthroughs, in my opinion, according to all of the indications on things getting better. Because in order for people to get things to get better in one place, they have to get better just about every place. And things are getting worse all over the world. Overall, they're not getting better. There are people who are doing quite well, but they are in the minority. And So therefore, the rest of the people are left to fend for themselves, all mostly, for the most part, apparently from everything that I hear that's going on. And so therefore, you act the same way you would on a battlefield. I always use that type of analogy because that's exactly, if you're non-white in a system of white supremacy, you're on a permanent battlefield until that war is over. So you act like a person who is on a battlefield. You go by doing the best that you can each and every day, almost like a refugee on a battlefield. That is the status of most of the non-white people on the planet. And so expect anything to happen that shouldn't happen at any time, because that's what happens on a battlefield. People are made very uncomfortable. Battlefields are made to make people extremely uncomfortable. So you're in battlefield conditions. So overall, just expect things to get worse. But according to the code, compensatory logic, you do your best to codify all of your thought, speech, and action so that what you say and what you do on a daily basis will produce the most constructive results. Be prepared for any unpleasant turns of events, but do your best to produce the most constructive results in whatever small or large things you happen to be doing. But remember, you're under battlefield conditions. Terrible things can happen at any time, in any place, for most of the people who are classified as non-white.
Mr. Fuller, do you feel that, in your humble opinion, based on your knowledge, based on your research, based on what you have seen, maybe even people that you have spoken to, do you feel that people forget or are unconscious that they are actually on a battlefield?
Well, first of all, I don't think most people realize that that's where we are. We're not told that. We're told all sorts of things. You turn on your television or read your newspapers, or you listen to speeches and whatnot.
Is that by design? No.
Yes. In the system of white supremacy, the white supremacists never want their victims to be on edge. They want them to be banjo playing, and everything is just fine. And all you have to do is just grab the person next to you and give them a great big hug and a high five and say that you love them. And that's an expression that's used over and over and over again. Love, love, love. I love you, man. Hey, I love you. Hey, man, everything's all right. Lots of old songs going way back.
Yes, sir.
Have the term all right in it, that word. Everything's all right. Everything going to be all right, and they put it in the songs, and particularly the old songs and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
No, things are nowhere near the way they ought to be.
So in the movie Shawshank Redemption that you often refer to, and they had various scenes where the prisoners were in designated stations, watched over by the prison guards. Is that similar to what's going on, in your opinion, as you see it? We are in designated stations of life, or whatever the white supremacists want us to, and then watch over us to make sure that we do not get out of line?
Sure. But we're all in prison. The whole world is a prison for non-white people in the system of white supremacy. That's what white supremacy means. We never look at it like something as awesome as it is. There's never been a more powerful government on this planet. Never. It has preempted all other governments. And it's called the system of white supremacy. You call it that. That's the term for it. People don't use this term, but I'm beginning to hear it little by little, more and more. But it's called white supremacy. But the full title is the system of white supremacy. It covers all 9 areas of activity.
Which are?
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. In other words, all of this comes under the system of white supremacy if you're classified as a person as non-white.
And they all work concurrently?
Black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige, anybody with color in his or her skin comes under that system, subject to that system.
Yes, sir.
And the system is designed to dominate and mistreat.
Exactly. And these systems, they do and can work concurrently. I'm asking.
Or you mean all of these
yes, all the above
areas of activity?
Yes, sir.
Yes, they're all interactive. What happens in politics affects what happens in economics. What happens in economics affects what happens in education. What happens in education affects what happens in sex. What happens in sex affects what happens in religion, and so on and so on. They're all interactive. These are just labels for what we might call categories of people activity.
Okay.
But people activity is all interactive. Everything affects everything else. What one person does in one thing will affect some other person in something else, or in that thing itself, in that area, and so on and so on. So the white supremacists, when they took over the affairs of all of the non-white people on the planet, they said, we're not going to leave them any decision-making on their own, except the sort of trivial stuff that'll mostly be destructive.
Yes,
anything destructive, self-destructive that they do among themselves, that's all a part of the package anyway.
Such as the carry-out bar down on the corner that they supply the liquor that they sell us to help us destroy ourselves.
Oh, sure. Anything that's going to be harmful.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you can eat all the artificial food that you can eat, whatnot. You can carry a gun as long as you know who to shoot, who not to shoot.
Yes, sir.
And all like that. And that you can be defiant. I mean, and they even entertain us with entertainment. Usually they lean toward making movies and writing books that glorify all the different ways that black people particularly can harm each other.
This is true. Yes, sir.
You're not going to sit down and see a movie or a TV presentation, most likely, that when you walk out, you're going to have that buoyant feeling of, oh, this makes me this inspires me to really do something that's really constructive. I mean, that's over-the-top constructive, almost out-of-sight constructive. This is the way we need to be feeling when we walk away from any TV program or any movie that's made, particularly those that are directed toward non-white people.
Even the black exploitation flicks that came out in the 70s, Superfly, all that kind of stuff, Shaft.
Well, I'm not going to specify, but
okay.
I'm going, because someone will say, "Oh, that's not true. You're bad mouthing black products and all like that." No, I'm not.
But when
I'm saying, always look at how people act. That's the criteria. How do people act after having seen any movie, regardless of who produced it or what the script is, anything like that? There are movies that I have looked at over and over again, and I'm inspired by them. I mean, it depends on how the movie is crafted. Inspired to do what? Inspired to do something constructive. Inspired to think constructively. And this goes way back when I first started going to movies, etc., and reading books. I will look up from the book, and I'll feel buoyant. I'll feel like, now, I feel like really doing something that matters. I have a feeling that I didn't have before I read the book or looked at the movie. There are certain scenes in movies, might not be the whole movie, that will inspire me to think a certain way and do certain things a certain way.
Within the system of racism, white supremacy, this is how you felt when you look at
this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are particular scenes and whatnot you can pick out in books, in movies, in TV presentations, and then there are movies that I practically disdain because I come away with a sinking feeling like, boy, this. I mean, I feel awful after having looked at all that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I can sense it, and I'm not inspired to do anything that makes sense. So therefore, I avoid looking at those because that is the reaction I'm going to get.
Okay. So
even knowing that what the movie is like and probably haven't seen it before.
Okay.
When I see it again, I don't feel like doing anything that makes sense.
Okay.
That is constructive.
I got it. So whether you liked the movie or had disdain for the movie, it really didn't matter to the white supremacists because they are the ones that were in control of it, producing and directing and so forth, or making money off of whatever it was.
Or maybe not. I mean,
okay, what would be the not?
The only criteria. See, the only criteria. In a movie or presentation that anybody makes is what do you think about when you walk away after it is over. That's a stage presentation. If you go to a presentation on a stage, it's not a movie. It's people acting on a stage. What did you come away with? What were you inspired to do? It always comes down to what you're inspired to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because I know that when I was very, very young, when I came out of a Roy Rogers movie, I'll specify some. I mean, or any of those what you call cowboy type movies. I mean, Saturday matinee, shoot 'em ups, we used to call them. I felt like getting a 6-shooter and shooting somebody.
Okay.
That was all that was in the movie. I mean, shooting. Just go get a gun. I mean, and get on a horse and ride through Death Valley. And, and round up whomever. I mean, then I would look at the next week I would go and look at a gangster movie. Then I would want to be a gangster.
I got you.
Because that's what I saw. But see, that's when I had a very, people expect at that age, at a very young age, 10, 12 years old, you to think like that.
Okay.
All right, but it wears off real quick.
It wears off.
But as as you get older and you begin to look at things in a very subtle manner.
Yes, sir.
All of that begins to sink in.
Yes, sir.
Particular among black people.
And
all right, it begins to sink in and take root. And the next thing you know, the whole neighborhood is now acting like what you picked up when you were 12 years old.
That's right.
And it was continued and reinforced by other movies and TV presentations, so that what you now have is a head full of very deadly garbage.
Exactly. Wow, that is... Toptainment Radio is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility that have hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and, of course, politics. Now, here's one that I'd like to share with you, and it's a very, very good program. It debuts or premieres every Wednesday here on TalkTainmentRadio.com. It's called Fight Back. And the legendary citizen advocate and political agitator, also an attorney, Bob Fortakis, revives his public affairs talk radio program, Fight Back. The confusion of disputed election results, unequal cuts to public school funding, and hate groups and speech are only some of the issues that Bob Fortakis takes to task. Now, Fight Back with Bob Fortakis broadcast on Wednesdays exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. And Brother Bob locally has been involved in what's going on with the election results, exit polling, and found some discrepancies, has filed a couple of lawsuits against that. It's a very, very good program, and it will get you to thinking about a lot of stuff concerning the elections. All righty. This is Talktainment Radio, the way it should be heard. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, on the world's greatest radio. We're speaking with Neely Fuller, and our on-topic subject has been, ironically, elections. Mr. Fuller speaks to what should you do according to the code. So you can direct your calls to this number, 1-877-932-9766, or your Gmails at 7 the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby at gmail.com, and I will have Mr. Fuller address that your questions. Before we take any calls, Mr. Fuller, you had mentioned on a few shows ago about I think it was the African American Museum that is scheduled to open up in Washington, D.C., and to my knowledge, I think I read or saw where it opened this week. Do you know anything about that, or have you gone to it?
Yes, it did open this week, and it was quite an opening, from what I understand. I didn't go myself. I might for sure go later because I like to do hands-on work and like to see things for myself. And I passed by it on many occasions when it was being built. But the crowds were pretty substantial on the opening day. So, like many people, and then another thing, the tickets are limited. And
okay.
So, eventually, I plan to go and take a look for myself. But then, here again, what is a museum for? And I have mentioned that I would hope that everything that black people are involved in is not in a celebratory vein. I prefer to use the word education rather than celebration in anything that is associated with black people worldwide. No celebrations, all education. Let the education be the celebration. Education meaning what? Learning what to do and what not to do. That's it. Everything that you look at, everything that you're involved in, should be a process of learning what to do and what not to do and why. And make everything that you do as constructive as you possibly can. It's just not a matter of just going around oohing and ahhing and hand clapping and nothing changes. No. Everything should be pointed towards some type of lesson that can be used, some type of lesson that can be used in a constructive manner. Everything that you touch, every conversation that you have, something that can be used in a constructive manner.
Yes, sir.
You don't contact people for any reason other than you come away from that contact with some type of constructive idea in your mind. Idea about doing something constructive. In fact, even the premises where you are, according to the compensatory code, be they ever so humble, shack by the track with the room in the back, as you might say, or a mansion or an apartment, what we call the living room shouldn't be a place where you just sort of hang out and drink beer and make loud noises with your friends and all this.
Yes, sir.
And or associates, etc. It should be an ingenuity room. In other words, when you walk in that room, you should think of, how can I improve myself? How can I improve the world? How can I solve a problem of some type? Ingenuity room. Okay. You should think of it as that. Right. And everything in that room should be like your TV set and everything, your DVDs and all like that, should be something that will kind of teach you to do something that will better conditions.
I see. Forever asking questions. Okay.
Yes.
You're listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and you can get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766. The phone lines are now open, or you can Gmail me at MrBobby@gmail.com. Going to the Gmails, it says, hello, Mr. Fuller. I am considering applying for a desk job as a clerk in the FBI/CIA, but I'm concerned that I will be not trusted by other victims who are suspicious of the FBI. I am also worried that I may be used as an agent against victims without my knowing it. What should I do? Thanks.
Take the job. take the job, because you're going to need to learn everything that you can in order to straighten out. You don't separate yourself from any activity, but you get into whatever activity you can, like the character in the movie, since we were talking about movies, Shawshank Redemption, Andy Dufresne. He worked in the warden's office. He was a prisoner working in the warden's office. A lot of other prisoners said, well, he shouldn't be doing that. He should be down here with us in the cell block. I mean, doing the things we usually do in the cell block, which is not much of anything, by the way, that's of any constructive value. So, but Andy Dufresne saw, by working in the warden's office and talking to the warden, and the warden being the crooked warden that he was, not saying that people in the FBI are crooked or anything like that,
yes,
CIA, I would not in any means imply that.
Yes, let's be
but
clear.
I'm saying we are in a racist world.
Mm-hmm.
So you go wherever people do things that have to do with any kind of learning of how to correct things, or even if they, whether they're doing things correctly or incorrectly.
Okay.
You can be a part of the correction.
I see.
Andy Dufresne was a part of the correction. By working in the warden's office, he was able to get a library.
He took the job.
Yes, he took the job, and he was able to talk to the warden and have the warden mail his letters out so that he can get a library in the prison.
All right.
The warden didn't come up with that idea.
Okay.
So you always position yourself as a prisoner of war.
Yes, sir.
In a prison.
Okay.
And the whole world is a prison if you're black.
All right.
So you position yourself where you can learn the most and get the most done.
Okay.
And make institutions be the way that they should be.
Okay. Perfect. All right, Kayla, that was the answer to your question. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number one. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question according to the compensatory code?
Good morning, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby. I have two questions. They're both based on the code book. I'm reading the revised expanded copy. My first question is in the topic of sex. Mr. Fuller writes, when choosing a sexual mate, one should promise to never, and one of them is never oppose another choosing to engage in sexual intercourse or sexual play with another non-white person. I wondered, why do you write that, Mr. Fuller?
What page are you on so I can look at where you're speaking?
That's page 294.
Okay.
Number 8.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Because it's not going to work. If the person is thinking about that and going to do it, let them do it. I mean, say do what you want. But see, all that is supposed to have been cleared up before you ever had the first act of sexual intercourse in the first place. That's on a part of the
200 questions?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
the anywhere from 100 to 200 questions, maybe more questions. I think I have about 175 that are outlined in the book. Before you ever have the first act of sexual intercourse, you ask and answer all of these questions, and you agree to do this in a democratic manner. It's all got to be democratic. This thing of saying that the male tells the female what to do or the female tells the male what to do. No. Everything is an even contract.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a handshake.
Okay.
Really. I mean, it's nobody involved in that but the two people who are involved. I mean, sexual intercourse is between two people.
Hey,
right?
Hang on, Mr. Fuller. Hang on, caller. I have to take a break. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. All righty. As we return, TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio, the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And if you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Remember that we are on every Wednesday for 2 hours from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you're out in California, that means when it is 9 a.m. here, it's 6 a.m. out there. Also, podcasts are available. Back to the caller. Caller, what is your second question for Mr. Neely Fuller?
Okay, it's also in the topic of sex. This is on page 302.
Okay.
Number 62. All right. For the sake of time, I won't read everything.
Well, go ahead. We have a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. It reads, have you ever participated in an orgy? If so, when, where, and why? If so, with how many people? Under what circumstance? Were any white people involved? If so, how many white people were involved with you? If so, what did you do? If so, what did they do? Who were these white people, and where are they now?
Mm-hmm.
My question is, why? I could assume why include the white people, but I'd like to hear from Mr. Fuller. Why does he emphasize on were white people involved?
Because we're in a racist system. See, everything in the code is about racism and what really goes on under the system of racism. So I'm addressing that. And I'm saying if you're talking to a prospective sexual partner, non-white, you want to know everything. In particular, you want to know everything that's racial. Everything that's racial. If you're going to engage male with female in sexual intercourse, you looking forward to it, or you think that it might happen, you should know everything. And particularly anything that has to do with race, about that other person, and that other person about you. Unless, and it's very democratic, it's not dictatorial, unless you agree to skip over that question. Both parties, just like it says in the book. You can agree. You can agree not to ask anybody, your prospective sexual partner, about anything, if that's the agreement. But once you make that agreement, just like in the movie Casablanca with Ilsa and Rick Blaine, they said they had agreed when they first met there'll be no questions. No questions at all about anything. Just go for it. No questions. You know, I'm here with you. You're here with me. We don't ask any questions. We don't answer any questions about our past or anything. If that's your agreement, then you make that agreement. But stick with your agreement. You can't come up and start asking questions later. And that's typified sort of like in a movie. But you can make that real. But if you agree to ask and answer certain questions, and you can skip over questions if you wish to. And it's up to you. Why are you skipping over this question? That's up to the two people involved. Now, I'm asking you this question. The question is in the book. And I want to know, have you ever participated in an orgy with white people? You might even ask, have you anticipated, and I think that question is in there somewhere, have you participated in an orgy of any kind with anybody? When? Where? But the thing about it, under this section, you don't name names of non-white people, but you name the names of white people. Why? Because we are in this untidy situation, you might say, called a war between those who believe in white supremacy and those who don't. And information is power. And sex is very, very, very powerful among all people. Sexual urges are very powerful. So the more knowledge you have about anything involving sex, the more understanding, nothing hidden, the better. Because there's nothing better than understanding and knowledge about anything.
Yes, sir.
Even if it's unpleasant. And a lot of things, people say, well, I just don't want to know this. Well, you can ask yourself a question. Why is it you don't want to know? You don't want to know the truth? You want to just walk through this battlefield situation, not knowing what's going on and why? And, well, sometimes that works. Many times it works. In most cases it works when you fool yourself. But that's something that needs to stop if you're going to be a real problem solver on this planet.
All righty.
You know everything about everything that you can possibly know.
All right. Thank you for your call, caller, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's see here. Let's go to the Gmails. Dear Mr. Fuller, good morning. I enjoy the program, and I recently ordered your book and a word guide. I have listened to a certain person on the radio speak on numerous occasions. The gentleman gives Mr. Fuller credit and has never tried to take credit for Mr. Fuller's work. This person, who I'm going to remain nameless at this particular point, is a victim, and he refers to the code. He does earn money with his recent videos series, but he is not taking credit, nor does he say he created anything pertaining to the code. At the least, I think he has exposed a generation to Mr. Fuller that otherwise would not hear of his works. In using Mr. Fuller's works, sound bites, videos, etc., my question is Mr. Fuller being compensated for the use of his materials? Mr. Fuller?
No, I haven't received any compensation, but I have addressed this entire matter on a previous program, I think, at great length. And I expressed what I had to say then, and that still holds. Whatever I said then, that still holds. And it directs mostly toward any violation of law as it is written, because we do have laws that copyright laws, laws of plagiarism, etc., etc. And the other factor is distortion of the message. And these are the things that I have addressed. And I've done this thoroughly, I think, in a previous program. And anything that I didn't address, a person can go to producejustice.com and probably revisit that matter as it has been expressed, or whatever matters pertaining to it. Go to producejustice.com. But I'm not going to revisit that now, because I'm going to take up this time to answer people's questions that have to do with correcting things that have to do with them. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about administrative affairs that have to do with my presentations and the manner in which it is being handled.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see here. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can simply download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and if you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com, and I will try to get your letter on. Our topic today has been the election, or election as Mr. Fuller talked about it. Election according to the code. Mr. Fuller talks about what you should do. We will address that after we get some information on your book, Mr. Fuller, the book and the Word Guide. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, go to Produce Justice. That's producejustice.com. Produce, like in production. That's something we're all supposed to be trying to produce, in my opinion. And in the opinion of, I guess, any logical progression of thinking, thought, speech, and action that would have to do with what people are supposed to be doing all over the planet. If justice is a product that should be produced, everybody should be trying to produce it. So you can go to producejustice.com, and what will come up on the screen is a brief description of a textbook, a compensatory code, United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. That's the basic title, which is explained in the book. Those words won't mean anything just glancing at them, but all of those words mean something, and all of those words, each word in that title is explained in the book. And it's a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. If you're not a victim of white supremacy, the book doesn't apply to you.
Okay.
So there should be no controversy about that.
All righty. All righty. ProduceJustice.com is where you can go and get the material. Let's see here. You had spoken to, before we go to the phone lines, to make this clear, you mentioned earlier in this dissertation or this conversation about having no contact with people, and I'm getting a letter here. The person wanted to know, well, what did you mean by that?
Oh, you contact people only for constructive reasons only. If as long as it has a constructive effect. The victims of racism seem to, when we make contact, our contacts are tacky, trashy, or terroristic. Too much of it, far too much. People make contacts all the time, every day rather. Contacts of all types. But try to make these contacts constructive. Keep in mind, is this contact that I'm making, when I get on my cell phone and call someone, is this going to be a constructive conversation? Or is it going to contribute to something that's non-constructive? That's the criteria. That's the only criteria you need.
Yes, sir.
Now, it might sound very restrictive, and in the minds of many, it is. But it's also, why should something constructive be constricted? Why should you make a situation, and all situations are nowhere near what they should be under the system of white supremacy? Why make a situation worse when you contact people? So just get in the habit of every move you make in interaction with other persons. You come away from that interaction with a constructive result.
Constructive result.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, cursing, screaming on the cell phone and whatnot. I mean, the national anthem for black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere is not lift every voice and sing, if we tell the truth. The words most associated with black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere, their contribution to the English language, is that one word, or some people say two words, hyphenated, MF. You hear this all the time.
That is true.
All the time. That
is
is the black national anthem.
Wow.
Truth be told. Let's tell the truth. Let's stop dilly-dallying around here and acting like, African-American culture and all. Look at the centerpiece of our culture.
MF.
Yes,
wow.
MF, everything. We describe everything that way. We describe the sky that way, a cloud that way, a bird that way.
Why?
The bus going by, the people on the bus.
Why?
Because that's how we've been trained.
That's how we've been
trained. Talk in a destructive manner. Everything is hostile.
MF.
Everything is destructive, usually self-destructive. And we engage in it. We embrace it. And we think it's everything from funny to what black culture is supposed to be.
That is true.
Yes.
That is
Truth
true.
be told. That's what it's supposed to be. Anything that is derogatory, I mean, we want to be right in the center of it. Anything that's going to be self-destructive, we want to be right in the center of it. Yes, I mean, this rush to get into it. And anybody come around with any kind of constructive idea, we have total contempt for it. We don't even want to hear it. It's boring.
Wow.
It's not what black people are about. It's not our thing, as we say.
Woo!
We need to get away from that nonsense.
Man, you just dropped the dime there. Sugar, honey, iced tea. Let's go to the phone lines. Number one, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question according to the code? Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Am I on?
You are on. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I listened to the program last week, and it seems like everybody's confused about what copyright is, what it's not, how you can use it. So I took the liberty of looking it up. And copyright, I mean, it's a simple thing. It's the right to copy. The person who has it gives another person the right to copy their work. That's it. Okay? The law says there's a certain thing called fair use, where they can use it for certain reasons, one of which is this small excerpt in a review or criticism of Mr. Fuller's work, short passages to illustrate or clarify the author's observation.
Uh-huh.
A parody, which is the cartoon of a portion of the code. Brief quotes, small portions can be used by a copy by a library to replace part of a damaged copy. It can be used by a teacher to illustrate a lesson, short portion. A violation of this copyright is using the work without the author's permission. Okay? Now, there's a person called Victor of Racist White Supremacist who has summarily taken all of the audio tapes from Talktainment and put it on his private YouTube channel. That's what's happening now. Okay? He's been on there for 4 years. I didn't know that because when I click on Google Mr. Fuller's videos, only a few videos come up, when I knew there were a lot of videos there. Meanwhile, this Victor of RWS copied them all under his name so he can pick them up, take them here, put them on another site. You know, he's been on there for 4 years. Okay? Recently, there's been conversation on this YouTube channel. He says, I called Mr. Fuller. I'm waiting for him to let me know if I can use this work. Now, he's had it up there 4 years. Now, all of a sudden, after he gets caught, then he calls. He says he calls Mr. Fuller. He also says, right on the internet, Mr. Fuller didn't have a copyright agent. Mr. Fuller team will get back to me. This was last week. Even though you had the program, I heard Mr. Fuller say none of this, he doesn't give any permission for any of this, and yet he still has the videos up there. So Mr. Bobby, he has Talktainment videos. That's all he has. And he has little clips of them, like about 500 of them. So on these clips, you don't hear nothing about, go to Produce Justice to get this work. Go to Talktainment to hear this. Our time is this. It's nothing about Mr. Fuller. It's about this person taking Mr. Fuller's work and Talktainment's program, rebroadcasting it, and putting it on YouTube. Now, I know that's against the law. I know it is. They say on the NFL network, you can't rebroadcast this program. That's any program. Okay, so I would suggest, Mr. Bobby, that you get your copyright team involved because your name is on there. Talktainment is on there. And Mr. Fuller, and they're not playing the whole 1 hour show, where it says Talktainment Radio, Worldwide Network. That's not on there. So therefore, people on that channel, because it's a channel, just like Produce Justice is a channel, Talktainment is a channel, this person has the channel as Victor of Racist White Supremacist. Like it's his work, like it's his personal work, and the people who come on there think they can't even hear Mr. Fuller's work unless they go there. Okay, which, there is some truth to that, since he downloaded all of these, rebroadcast them, and put it on his channel. Okay, that's what's happening. Now, he says he called Mr. Fuller, which, even if he did, he didn't take them down. He took them down and put them on another website. He has 10 different websites, all victor of racism, white supremacists, including a Facebook page of Mr. Fuller's. Now, he got Mr. Fuller's picture up there. So when anybody clicks on it, it says, Mr. Fuller said this, Mr. Fuller said that. There's a book. There's some books that this Trojan Pam wrote, black books. Got Mr. Fuller's picture there and says, this book got good reviews. That's not Mr. Fuller. It's not his Facebook page. He says so on his website. He doesn't have a Facebook page. There were 6 Facebook pages on there, all called Neely Fuller, none of which were. Mm-hmm. Okay? A year or so ago, I saw a memo that Mr. Fuller put up that says to all people, and how they couldn't use his name, his image, the copy of his book, any of that. It was right on Facebook, okay? This victor of racist white supremacists puts it on his Facebook page. Oh, that was a white supremacist who wrote that note. Okay. Meanwhile, it was signed. I mean, so he's confusing people. He's confusing Mr. Fuller. He's confusing his audience on YouTube. And he apparently has all of Mr. Fuller's tapes, and he's using them for his own personal gain.
Okay, let me give Mr. Fuller a chance to respond to that. Mr. Fuller?
Well, like I've said before, I've addressed this before on a previous program about copyright and plagiarism and the other laws that govern this. And I've also said about the distortion of the message. I've covered that in a previous program. And anything else that I have to say about it, I'll say on my website, producejustice.com.
The thing is, Mr. Fuller, a lot of people don't know about your website because when you Google Neely Fuller's name, there's about 50 websites that come up before yours, meaning other people are using your work.
Well, I would like to use this time, but I would like to use this time now, since people have added another hour to this program to address the things that people are calling in about. But I appreciate your call, and thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Very interesting. And if somebody is using my name, Mr. Bobby, and you didn't ask me, you didn't ask my permission to do that, then I'm definitely not being compensated. If you are in violation, that's wrong, and I do not give my permission for you to use, whoever you are, to use my name or my moniker or anything without my express written consent. And if it is a copyright violation, then I'm not for that at all. Whatever that is about, I'm not for that and do not give my permission for that. Okay, let's see here. We can wait a minute. You know what? I'm going to take this call on the second hour because I'm looking at the time, and we're not really going to have time to do this. We'd have to cut it off. Okay, Galen, so I'll get him on the second hour, but keep him on hold here. Okay, if you want Mr. Fuller's work, you can go to producejustice.com. You can get the books that are there. In fact, I needed to ask him a question about that, but the book is entitled The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Mr. Neely Fuller. The revised expanded edition is now on sale, and also the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide is there. You can get all that material by going to producejustice.com, and I believe that is the only authorized site by Neely Fuller to get that. Talktainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio, and radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour. Second hour of Talktainmentradio.com. We simply go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. We're heard every Wednesday from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. Eastern Time, exclusively on TalkTainMentRadio.com. That is radio the way it should be heard. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. And this is our moniker, Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. If you would like to call in, you may do so. We have a couple of lines open now at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby at gmail.com, and I will try to get your letters or your comments on or questions for Mr. Fuller. Our topic today is election, being that this is, I guess, supposedly an election year, and someone asked Mr. Fuller should they vote. So he addressed that, said according to the code. So he talks about what you should do. And if you have a question concerning that or any other question off topic, you may go to. And then, of course, we've been dealing with the 8th area of human activity, which happens to be sex, and we will have a couple of questions there. But before we do that, let's go to the phone lines. And line number, what are we, Galen? Line number 2? Let's see. Galen, what line? Okay, number 2? Okay, line number 2. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Hello and good morning. Can you hear me, Mr. Bobby?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for taking my phone call, Mr. Fuller. Thank you so much for all of your work, everything that you've put together. Just ordered your book, so hopefully it'll be here in a couple of days. I'll get right to it. Number 1, piggybacking off what the last caller just said, as far as your work is concerned, Mr. Fuller, you're not the only one that's happening to. As a matter of fact, Dr. Claude Anderson's stuff is underneath the same person's name, too, as well. So I don't know if you guys are in contact with any of his people, but you might want to let him know that, too, as well. My question, though, is, Mr. Fuller, especially dealing with this election, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, the way that debate ran and how the media is trying to say one of them won and the other one lost. You know, it's really funny, Mr. Fuller, but working where I work here in Silicon Valley, I'm really noticing a lot of white people in particular are being very, very quiet about who they're really leaning towards as far as a president. And my question is if they're choosing to be quiet and they're choosing not to express it as they normally do, does this typically mean that they may or may not be hiding their real feelings about the agenda behind these people? Because it seems to me, Mr. Fuller, like no one that we vote for anyways really has black people's problems in the forefront. I mean, a young man just got killed last night in San Diego, and it just seems as if everything that happens to black people just gets swept under the rug. And I know what it's about. It's the system of white supremacy. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, Mr. Fuller. Thank you so much again for your work, sir.
Hey, caller, hang on, caller. But go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes. The system of white supremacy is the most powerful government on the planet. I mean, only government is really worthy of being called a government.
Mm-hmm.
There is no other government that even gets honorable mention. People govern themselves as individuals, you might say, to an extent. You can get up out of a chair and walk across the room and whatnot. You have the freedom, quote unquote, to do that in most places, to get up out of a chair or to load or put a load of hay on a wagon. You have the freedom, quote unquote, to do that. But overall, if you are a non-white person anywhere on this planet, you do come under the system of white supremacy in every area of activity, every minute of every day. That's economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, that doesn't say that every white person is a racist, but every white person who is able to be one most likely has to be one. every white person who is able, underline able, to be a white supremacist, most likely has to be one, logically speaking, in a system where everything is racial. Not some things, everything. Everything is divided into white and non-white, and the white supremacists. And the white supremacists are the people who practice domination and mistreatment of non-white people. That doesn't include all white people, but those who do. Those who practice racism do. That's their only value system. They don't have another value system. That is the problem. And everybody should be working, both white and non-white, to replace that system with a system of justice, which means what? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help in every area of activity. No exceptions.
No exceptions.
Now, in this current voting situation,
yes,
like voting situations all over the world, wherever they are, the white supremacists have a tendency, normally, because we are in that system, to continue the system. Why? Because it's a successful system. It's a very tempting system to keep in place. And anything that looks like it may make that system unstable, the average white person who is in the system looks and says, well, I don't want to be a racist, probably. I'm saying maybe not the average, but a substantial number of white people on the planet say, I don't want to be a racist. I mean, people, accusing me of being a racist, I don't like that. And I don't even like to think of myself as one. But what's the alternative? This is what we're used to. This is what, I don't know of anything else other than that. We've never had anything else other than that. And to try anything else other than that is risky. And people, the average person, doesn't like to take risk in doing something different when that something different has huge question marks on it. And so when I say, people like myself, as victims of racism, say, well, why not try justice? Well, justice as a theory sounds great, but white supremacy is a practical thing, and it works. It produces many material things. Most of the material things that gets produced under the system of white supremacy, greater than any system we've ever had on the planet before then. All of the other systems have come and gone and in no way compare with the accomplishments of the system of white supremacy. So what's wrong with keeping what we got? Well, what's wrong is that you can produce a lot of things. All kinds of ingenuity ideas come up from the master sitting on the porch being fanned all day and has room to make all kinds of ideas because all of the grunt work is being done by the slaves who are the system of white supremacy. So, yes, you have the luxury of coming up with ideas, really, that help everybody in the long run. But so where's the problem? The problem is millions of people are destroyed in the process. So, you look at the other system, the other concept that's never really been seriously tried. That's the concept of justice. So you examine it, and nobody's ever seriously tried it, so that's why you don't have it anywhere on the planet, because it's impossible to have white supremacy and justice on the same planet at the same time. So justice is just a theory. White supremacy is a reality. So nobody wants to really try that. White people get nervous when you talk about replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice.
That's right.
And it's understandable, because justice has never been seriously tried. See, that's the unknown. But if you really think about it, can it be done? Can there be a worldwide system of justice to replace the system of white supremacy so you don't destroy people Just have planned destruction of people so that you can have plenty of things for the people who are still here. And you just continually, give people inspiration, mostly white people, inspiration to keep supporting a system that destroys people, that's designed to destroy people
Yes, sir.
and produce things. So that's a dilemma here. And that's why that's connected with all voting everywhere in the world.
Okay.
Because basically we are trying to choose between the system that we have or the system that we envision that should have been here in the first place before somebody invented a thing called racism.
Yes. All righty. Is that caller still on the line, or is he gone?
Oh, Mr. Bobby, I'm still here.
Oh, yeah, good. I wanted to, before you go, did you just say that other websites were being compromised as Mr. Fuller's website is?
No, what I said, Mr. Bobby, is speaking on that last caller that called before me, how she had mentioned a particular person's YouTube page. And I understand Mr. Fuller doesn't understand how that works completely, but what I was trying to say is you guys on Talktainment Radio, I'm like a lot of people, Mr. Bobby, who just stumbled across Mr. Fuller's talks on the radio, but I found him through another person who has produced documentaries. And this man who's produced documentaries gives full credit to Mr. Fuller, and where he speaks about it on his show every day. He quotes him by name and says his name, so he gives him full credit. But the point is through this particular person's YouTube page, they just so happen to not be taking Mr. Fuller's broadcasts and rebroadcasting them. There are others that you guys have had on your show that is doing the same thing. Dr. Renuka Rashidi, Dr. Claude Anderson, a lot of people. So you guys might want to let them know, too, as well, because if he's monetizing it, of course, that is not right.
That's
and
right.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for holding on. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, caller, very much for that information. Let's go to line number one, but let me do this first. Let me get this station break out of the way. Okay, Talktainment Radio is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility that actually have hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and, of course, politics. Matter of fact, we've been discussing about elections today. Now, here's one that I would like to share with you, and I did share it in the first hour, but it bears repeating again. It's called Fight Back, with the legendary citizens advocate and political agitator Bob Fortakis. He revives his public affairs talk radio program, and it's called Fight Back. The confusion of disputed election results, unequal cuts to public school funding, and hate groups and speeches are only some of the issues that Bob Fortakis takes to task. Fight Back with Bob Fortakis broadcast on Wednesdays, and it is exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, and I am the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and we do invite your calls at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7MrBobby@gmail.com, and I will be happy to read your letters, and it's been very, very good today. Our topic today has been the election. Mr. Fuller addressed that. We will probably have him do that again, but you may go off topic with any subject that you want to. Okay, let's go to line number one. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question according to the compensatory code? Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. My question pertains to the 9 areas of people activity as well as the current voting. With the 9 areas of people activity being linked and the white supremacists providing distractions to mislead non-whites, that there is no system to oppress them, wouldn't the act of voting fall in the category of non-constructive use of time? And those who actually vote, wouldn't that make those people complicit in the system, in continuing the system of white supremacy?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes. Anytime we do anything in the system of white supremacy, we are doing it in the system of white supremacy. And anything that you do there's an old, I'll use this. There's an old expression. Everything supports what is strong already. Like the little plants that might be around an oak tree. Well, the oak tree is one of the strongest trees in the forest. And so if there are some small plants around the base of that oak tree, the concept is that those small plants will actually help to nourish the oak tree, which is the strongest tree within the proximity of those small plants that are around the base of the oak tree. So the system of white supremacy is already in place. And if you're a prisoner of war, you do support the prison by being a prisoner. There's no way around that. But here again, I'll give the illustration. Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption. That was the character's name.
Yes.
It's a white man who was in the prison. And he came into the prison on a bogus charge, just like black people are in the prison we're in on a bogus charge. And the bogus charge is something incorrect about us because we are black. So therefore, we are eligible to be mistreated. That's the white supremacist theory, that we are people who are assigned by the creator of the universe to be mistreated. This is the fabrication that they have made for their convenience. And they have been very successful at doing this, at dominating and mistreating people who have color. So they have done this in every area of activity and made a prison of the entire planet, of everyone who has color in his or her skin, and they dictate what these people can do and not do in all areas of activity every minute of every day. What all of their victims, all of their prisoners can do and not do. So anything that we do is within the prison system, like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption. But you make the best of your prison conditions with the idea that you're going to bring this prison down, which is what Andy Dufresne did. He actually positioned himself as best he could. He had to figure out a compensatory way of maneuvering within what he had been given, and that's a bogus situation, a fraudulent situation, a criminal situation, and he made the best of it so that he could weave his way through it and detox the entire situation so that that situation changed to another situation. Because you can't work outside of a system that you're already in. You're in the system completely. It's not like you can go to some island somewhere and set up some operation and work from there. You have to work from within the prison because you're in a world prison. There's no place to go. Even if black people wanted to go to the moon or to Mars and whatnot and set up an installation to work against racism on Earth, they'd have to get permission from the white supremacists to do it. Not only that, the white supremacists, having all the power, would have to take them there. So you haven't really done anything except transferred the same system to another place. So there's nowhere to run. You have to actually erode the system through a code of thought, speech, and action each and every day. Our behavior has to change in order for that code to be institutionalized within the system.
Absolutely.
I hope that that's understood.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, caller, for your call. Very much. Okay. Let's go to line number 3. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Yes. I been debating like white people on social media sites like Facebook and Twitter. I just want to know what the code says about that, if it's constructive or not. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Well, I don't believe in the word debate as such as it is used in general. I prefer exchanges of views. That's the way I prefer to look at it, where it's not personal. See, a debate gets personal. You've seen that in the elections and whatnot. They have a tendency to get personal because you're thinking about the person that you're talking to, rather than the ideas that you are conveying. So I would suggest, according to the code, when you talk to white people on the basis of logic.
Okay, wait a minute.
And everybody has to agree to tell the truth.
Okay.
About what their views really are.
If it's
without
not
shouting, without name calling, without being personal. It's not personal, it's business.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to go right there. It's not personal, it's business. Okay, I got it. Yeah. Okay. That's exactly where I wanted to make it clear. It's not personal. It's business. All right, now, but the question on that is this, Mr. Fuller, when you say that, what does that mean?
What it means is you stick to logic. In other words, cause and effect. In other words, when you're talking to a white person about racial matters, you first agree that you're not going to be personal, that you're going to talk about it like it's pure science, like it's business.
Okay.
So in order to have pure science, everybody has to tell the truth. You have to be able to point out whatever flaws you see or perceive, and that's the other person does the same thing. Without anybody getting angry and getting into a shouting match and the name-calling thing, that should be prohibited.
Yes.
You don't do any of that. Any of that. You're being purely scientific. This is business. You're trying to accomplish something.
Okay.
Now, the white supremacists or the suspected white supremacists, first of all, that's the title that you always give it. You suspect that the white person who is able to be a white supremacist probably is one. And you can tell them that. Say, sir, well, ma'am, I suspect, most likely, I am duty-bound to suspect that you are indeed a white supremacist.
You could be.
I suspect that. You could be. You may not be, but I suspect you could be.
Yes.
So let's get that straight right from the beginning. And then you continue the conversation, the exchanges of views.
Okay.
They give you their views about how this, they call it a dilemma sometimes. Some people call it that. But it's a major problem. It is the problem of the universe, the number one problem. So you might even, discuss that as a start off. Is it the number one problem? And if it is not, what is?
What is, yes. Asking questions.
Yes, questions and answers. All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. And no question should be off limits.
That's right.
When you're talking about race.
If you're going to be honest.
Yes, if you're going to be honest. Otherwise, you're not going to go anywhere.
That's right.
All of this, worrying about how somebody's going to feel, that should be out. It's feelings are out. This is business.
Yes.
Now, is the business of white supremacy something that should be retained or should be eliminated and replaced with something better? That should be the way you discuss it, because that's what you should be talking about. You have to agree whether or not there is a system of white supremacy in place. And white supremacy is not the system, not the dominant system. What is the dominant system? See what I mean?
Yeah.
So discuss that first. So then you ask, is it a problem? And if it is a problem for whom? All right? And is it a benefit? And if it is a benefit for whom?
For who, yes.
And why? And where? And when?
There you
and
go.
How does it work? Go into all the details without, like I said, being discourteous, without name-calling, without getting into a shouting match, or everybody trying to talk at once. This is, and I would like to interject this. This is one reason I don't particularly like to participate in panels.
Yes.
Because on a panel, I have noticed very little gets done because everybody starts talking at once.
That is true.
Or one person starts trying to outshine the other just for the purpose of outshining the other, without any real information being conveyed to the people who listen. But on a one-on-one, things usually get done.
Yes, sir.
This is why negotiations sometimes between just a few people, just 1, 2, 3, usually between two, usually are much more efficient than negotiations of a committee.
Okay.
I think people may have noticed that. That's just a mechanical thing.
Okay, mechanical thing. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your call, caller. Let's go to, thank you for your, okay. Line number, what is it, 2? Okay, line number 2. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question according to the code?
Well, really, I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Bobby. You had a female caller on maybe about a year ago. She said that she doesn't believe that white supremacy are supreme. She actually believes that they are inferior. And my thing is this, a lot of people don't understand what white supremacy means. Like, white supremacy doesn't mean that, that white people can run faster or jump higher than black people. What white supremacy means is that you, as a person of color, you have to go to them for food, clothing, shelter, jobs, and they don't have to come to you for anything. So, when Mr. Fuller talks about white supremacy, that's what he means, that you have to go for him for all your basic needs, and he doesn't have to come to you for anything. So I just
want to get that out there.
Let to get that out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Fuller, I guess that would be under VGQ?
Yes, that'd be under VGQ, and that is in line with what the code says. I mean, that's what white supremacy is.
Yeah.
People get, they get nervous about the term supreme because they think that's some type of, that's a put down of black people. I mean, black people, we got some characteristics too. I mean, ain't nobody supreme over me and all like that. So it gets into that feeling thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're talking about a mechanical thing. We're talking about a positional thing. We're talking about an army of people who have conquered of people who got conquered.
Got conquered.
That's,
yes.
I mean, that's a fact. That's a fact. Otherwise, what are the Black Lives Matter? What are the protests? We shall overcome. What is all this about? I mean, if this doesn't exist. I mean, some people imply there's no such thing as white supremacy. Well then, where do you go if you're black to get anything that's worth anything? Ask yourself that. All over the world as we speak right now in 2016, there are black people with their children, little babies in their arms, on the backs of trucks and wagons and in rickety boats, trying to do what? Truth be told, find out which way did the white people go. Because I have nothing where I am. Nothing but total misery. I'm over on this side of town among a whole bunch of black people who I claim that I love, and they claim that we love each other, and they love me, and we all get together out there in the street and have a barbecue. And 15 minutes later, gunfire is all over the place among all of these loving people. Explain that.
Right.
Explain that to ourselves. You don't have to explain it to anybody else, but stop lying to yourself.
All right.
That's the worst thing you can do.
Worst thing you can do. TalkTimeRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are now available. Download the TalkTimeRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio, the way it should be heard. Stay right there. We're going to have more of your calls, and hopefully we will get to some Gmails. All that and more coming up next on TalkTimeRadio.com. Oh, technology. You should see all these bells and whistles and electronics and all this stuff going off to try to get the show on. You don't see that because it's behind the scenes. But anyway, TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. So you can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., who you called in to hear, and man, he's been on target today answering all of your questions and concerns. Our own topic today is the election, and he has addressed that, and before the show ends, he will also address that again. Before we go to the phone line, thank you. Before we go to the phone lines, I just want to read a letter or a note to you, Mr. Fuller. This is from John R. He says, thanks for the great work you do, Mr. Fuller, each week. And he says, and please don't play into the trolls calling up to the show causing dissension. Mr. Fuller has made it clear where to find his authentic work, but many of these people contacting the show could be agents of the white supremacists attempting to divide and conquer via trivial matters. We should stay on code and sidestep these people causing divisions. So whether these divisions are on other channels or whatever, stay on code. You know where you can get the information, going to producejustice.com or on talkteaminradio.com. That is the authentic site for Mr. Fuller's work, including his book, which you should have a copy of it anyway, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And Mr. Fuller, quickly, before we go to the phone lines, where can we get the book and quickly the latest updates?
You can go to producejustice.com. That's for all the information that you need. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of what is in the textbook entitled The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, which is white supremacy. All of this is explained in the book, and then suggestions made directed to the individual person, about suggestions about what to think or how to think or some things to think about and what to say, how to say certain things in certain situations, and not say certain things in certain situations, and actions to take as an individual person, an individual victim of racism, wherever you happen to be on the planet. And the book is segmented into 9 areas of activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And then at the end of the book, the basic revised expanded edition, you have a lot of little general thoughts that I have put in there, made up of quotes that I have come up with that I think would help people to think, speak, and act in a manner that hopefully would be constructive, because everything in the book is supposed to be used in a constructive manner. And things that don't make sense to people in the book. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't buy into it.
That's right.
I always say, never believe anything that Neely Fuller says or have what you might call blind faith in it. Absolutely not. I don't even do that with my own material, have blind faith in it. I like to put it to a test, see if it works. If it doesn't work, hey, it's something in error here.
Okay.
So you skip over that. And come back to it later on. Maybe when it does work. I don't know.
Okay.
We're feeling our way.
All righty.
Yeah, because that's why it's called a compensatory code, making up for what's missing. What's missing is justice. It's never been produced by anybody. So we're trying to find it. We're trying to produce it, rather.
All righty. What line are we? Okay, line number 1. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and what is your question, according to the code?
I'd like to make a comment. I heard Mr. Fuller so much, I really don't be having any questions.
What is your comment?
The brother was saying they don't need us for nothing. That's not so. They came to Africa for labor, which they got to build his empire. They came to Africa for resources, not just here, but all over the world. And they're still in Africa using labor and getting resources. Now, the only real challenge I have been able to see against the system of white supremacy in my life has been real, true socialism, like under Mao Zedong, Karl Marx, and Lenin. That's been the only real threat that I have seen to this capitalist system, because it's a dog-eat-dog system that means the masses no good. Now, I'm going to close with this real quick, my good brother.
Go ahead.
I want people to listen very carefully. All the things these people do, Mr. Fuller talk about, they also exterminate people. They white races of people from the planet. They haven't stopped. We, black people, we are next on the menu. These police shootings, what you call shooting, this is government-sponsored terror. government-sponsored assassination. They are creating an atmosphere for black people in this country to be exterminated and for it to be accepted in the world. And they are going to keep doing it until it explodes, and they're going to be coming at us, and they're going to go door to door to assassinate us. And I would suggest if anybody able to get out of here or get some young children out of here, go somewhere. It doesn't mean that there's some perfect place. But like the people in the World Trade Center who jumped out of the windows, hey, it was a fire there. They jumped 100 floors. This is where we are. I don't know. I can't tell you to go to no perfect place. But right here, they are going to exterminate us. If you can go somewhere, I suggest you get out of here.
Okay, my brother. All right.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Under VGQ. VGQ. Let me read this before we go to the phone line. It says, this is from Brother Javar. He said, Mr. Fuller, I rarely disagree with anything that you say, but I do have to take umbrage with your position that racism, white supremacy is the most powerful system in the world has ever known. That is simply untrue. It is the most evil and the most materialistic and the most greedy and the most perverted and the most mentally deranged system, but it has no true power. True power rests with the Almighty and the Almighty alone. I know what he means, but I prefer to remember the great ancient black civilizations of ancient Kemet, Kush, Nubia, Songhai, and many others. Now, those were truly powerful systems in the in a godly sense. In the end, those will be the only ones that matter. The white supremacist is a sick blip on the timeline of eternity. They hate the truth. I get banned on Facebook at least once a month for telling it. We all know that Satan is behind anyone that hates the truth. Still learning, Brother Javari in Tampa. Mr. Fuller, you care to comment on that before we take the call?
That comes under VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification. The gentleman is guaranteed the qualification of saying what he said, and it should be taken into consideration within the entire discussion of racism, counter-racism, and everything associated with that.
Mm-hmm. So if people read the book and they want to know what VGQ, say it so that...
Victims Guaranteed Qualification.
There you go.
Every victim of racism is qualified to say anything that he or she chooses to say about race, racism, and counter-racism.
Read the book.
Why? Because you earn that simply by being a victim.
That's
You don't have to get permission to have your opinion on your victimization. So therefore, that comes under that, and every victim has an equal voice,
right.
Or should have an equal voice.
Mm-hmm.
That is the premise.
Okay.
I have a voice. I say what I say, and anybody who wants to oppose what I say, who is a victim, can do that. As long as it's about race, saying about race, racism, or counter-racism. Why? Because no one has ever solved this problem. So you never can tell who might stumble up on the solution.
Right. You got to read the book, people. You got to read the book. Simple as that. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Our on-subject topic has been and is election, particularly the one that's coming up, but people wanted to know, what to do and what, the questions concerning that. And Mr. Fuller has indicated the answer to any problems is to ask questions. So we'll do that. What line are we going to go to right now? Okay. Line number 3. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question according to the compensatory code?
Yes. Now, look, I may have more statements here. White people have a creator, too. See, the same creator that we have. Now, I don't know what our situation is. Is it a punishment? Is it a type of Babylon or Egypt? But first of all, we got to get some unity. But, instead, we got to go along with the program, but we got to get some unity and stop all this other nonsense that black people are out there doing. You know what I mean? All of the shooting and stuff and all of that. But look, we shouldn't desire to be around whites. Now, we know we got to go to school, work, we got to go shopping for food. This is where we're going to see white. Black people act like they want to mingle with and be with and marry and all that. See, if we leave white people alone, they'll come around us to see what we're doing. They're already dancing like and everything about playing, dunking the ball like Dr. J, Michael Jordan. See, we got to leave these, let's be us and leave these folks alone and try to get some unity. Now, I don't know why God has it set up. Maybe our turn to come back around. Maybe. Next time it may be the turn of the Chinese or Eskimo to oppress people. You see what I mean? So we got to get it together. Now with this police thing real quick, I've never been sworn in, but I've had academy training, armored truck, bank, government installations, same thing, security academy, police academy, FBI, infantry, special forces. It all comes down to a trigger, and a baby can pull a trigger. See, so these people pull that trigger out of hate, shooting your teenager 16 times. That's all hatred. So we got to get some real unity. We got to stop all this clowning ourselves first. Then we get together and deal with these people. That's the kind of statement that I want to make.
Okay.
If Mr. Fuller can just make a statement off of my statement.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, you care to comment on that?
That comes under VGQ.
VGQ.
Everything that the gentleman says should be considered by all of the listeners in detail. Go over everything that he just said, consider it, and use it if you see something there
that is constructive.
That you think will be constructive to you.
Okay.
And it's the same way with everything that I've written and everything that the next person writes.
Okay.
And the next thing that the next person says. That's what guaranteed qualification,
gotcha,
victims qualification is about.
All right, VGQ.
VGQ.
All right, Mr. Fuller, got a Gmail from Jonathan. He says this, Mr. Fuller, what are all the ways that white supremacists control you, or Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and how does Mr. Fuller respond to that control? I don't know what that means, but this is what he wrote.
Well, it means white supremacy. I'm a prisoner of war.
Okay.
Just consider yourself, if you ever have an idea, or if you've seen a movie or read a book or been in prison yourself, just look at it like that, being in a prison. In a prison, everything that you do is orchestrated.
So you've been locked up, Mr. Fuller?
No, I've never been in what you call what I call greater confinement. See, we're all in confinement.
Okay.
But then when you get locked up, like you get pulled over, and handcuffs put on you, I've never been in that situation.
Oh, good.
Where you go to an actual jail and get put behind bars. That's what the code book calls greater confinement. You're being put in a smaller box. But the entire world is just a big box under the system of white supremacy because you have color in your skin under the system of white supremacy, and that's held against you. You have already been convicted. Before I was born, I was convicted of being a criminal for having color in my skin. My mother, my father, the people that produced me, my original mothers and fathers. Before the illegitimate mother and father, if I say in the code book, the white supremacists, they became my illegitimate parents, and they are still my illegitimate parents. Why? Because they control everything that I do. They tell me what food I'm going to eat, and where I can go, and where I can't go, and where I better not go, and when I can go and do this and do that, what I can learn in a school, and how I can use what I learned, and how I better not try to use what I learned. They set all of the parameters. Born in prison, get that picture in your mind. Born in a prison and never got out. And it's a bogus prison. It's not a matter of just trying to get out of the prison. That that's not happening because the entire planet is under the prison of white supremacy if you have color in your skin. So you actually have to dismantle the prison itself and replace it with something that's not a prison. Because it's a criminal prison in the first place.
Okay.
It's a criminal enterprise, the system of white supremacy.
Yeah, money-making thing here. Okay. Got an email here, Gmail. It says from Jermaine. He says, Mr. Fuller, I recently ordered the book and word guide. I enjoy listening to the program. I have enjoyed looking up the etymology of words. Mr. Fuller, do you recommend using the dictionary to study the code? Etymology being the study of the origin of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout history. That's what that word etymology means. Mr. Fuller, you care to comment on that?
Yes, study words for sure. Everything you can get your hands on. In the movie Malcolm X, I think that the character called Baines not only talked about the Nation of Islam and trying to get, as he went through the process of converting Malcolm X to the religion of Islam, but there's a showing there by the producer of the movie that they sat down and started going through the dictionary, I think. And,
yeah, they did.
I would recommend. I say in the code book, or I think somewhere, or at least in some of my talks. I think it's mostly in the talks. I have said that if you are in greater confinement, one of the best things you can do, since you have plenty of time, is get a huge dictionary there in the cell block or wherever they allow you to go, if they have these facilities available, and get a dictionary, English language dictionary, and start from word one. There are some dictionaries that are so big that you cart them around on wheels. If you can get one that big, and if you have a lot of time, like you were doing 20 years without parole,
that's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time, and you will not get time like that again. And since you shouldn't spend your time fighting and cursing and just playing card games and checkers. Get that dictionary and start from word one, right from the very first word, and go through the entire dictionary. And that will put you way ahead of a lot of people out here who are not in your situation.
Yeah.
It actually will.
Yeah.
Just learning the meaning of all the words and the different meanings and how they change.
Yeah.
Because all words change. I have done that deliberately.
Yeah, that was the character was Baines, and they did, as I recall, get that dictionary out, start at page 1 and go right down there. They actually did that. Good illustration, Mr. Fuller. Well, I think it's a good illustration. This is from Yadiah, and she says, the only way blacks, this is the Gmail, the only way blacks around the globe becoming conscious, they will have to come out of Christian churches. Christianity is one of the white supremacist tools. Mr. Fuller, you care to comment on that?
The white supremacists will call themselves anything. This is the way I approach it in the book. They don't care what they call themselves, except they do not like to be called white supremacists.
So she went under area number 7, religion, and her VGQ on that was she was able to make this comment.
Well, what I'm not specifying any particular religion. I'm just saying what I've written.
Neither did she. But she was
say that again now.
Neither did she. She was just saying that according to her experiences, and I guess that would be under VGQ, that she has found that Christian churches or Christianity is one of the Christianity is one of the white supremacist tools. And I know in my own personal study, but people didn't call in to hear me, but I'm in agreement with her because I found some stuff that I had been saying for years. I found the truth that what I had been taught was not true. in the form of Christianity. That's one reason why I agree with her.
Well, a person can agree or not agree. Religious matters are always disputable. All religions, I mean, people have arguments about them. If you just want to get in an argument, it's not going to get into a religious argument. But what I say in the textbook, the religion of white supremacy is the strongest religion on the planet. Because people don't cut corners on that religion. The white supremacists do not cut corners on their religion. Their religion. In other words, it's very straight up. They only have one religion. A white supremacist, by being deceptive, a part of their religion is to be deceptive. So a white supremacist will call him or herself a Muslim.
Yeah.
And then the next day, that same white supremacist will call him or herself a Jew. And then the next day, or the next hour, or the next moment, will call him or herself a Christian, or a Buddhist, or a Confucianist.
Yes.
They'll call themselves anything. They don't care.
Yes.
As long as they can practice white supremacy. That's what they're not going to let anybody tamper with. But anything that they can get you to believe that they are, that's a part of their package.
That's
a part of their strength.
That's the
so
business.
A white supremacist will walk around and say, I am a Catholic priest.
Yes.
But a white supremacist doesn't practice anything except white supremacy.
That's right, because
they don't believe in any religion except white supremacy.
That's right.
But they will call themselves anything.
Anything.
And they will learn how to pretend that they are a member of any religion. They study every religion in detail. And they will come out like actors on a stage and say, I am the real article of Christianity. I am the greatest Christian that there ever was, other than Jesus himself. And they will go on and on and on, when what that person is a stone white supremacist. But he knows how to act, because they are the greatest actors in the world. White supremacists are the greatest actors in the world. Almost like magic. They have to be deceitful.
Like you
so
said.
In religion, they have perfected how to pretend that they are Christians, that they are Jews, that they are Muslims, that they are Confucianists, that they are any of the other religions that have come up that people never heard of, any of the newer religions and whatnot, Hindus, or whatnot, or which is some people say is one of the oldest of the religions. A white supremacist will say, oh, I'm a bona fide, I'm a real Hindu. I mean, all the way, completely. When what that person actually practices is white supremacy.
Mr. Fuller,
that's the only religion they believe in.
I like what you said earlier. It's not personal. It's business.
It's not personal, it's business.
And that's exactly what it is. It is business. And you know it, and I know it, and the listeners know that they will and have said anything to keep this system going, because it is a system. Thank you so much, Mr. Fuller. That is, man, that is that is some powerful stuff.
Yeah, you can't be a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu or a Muslim and be a white supremacist. You're either one or the other.
That's right.
And once you practice white supremacy, forget about the rest of the religions. I mean, no, there's no way. That's impossible.
It's impossible.
Right.
All right, Mr. Fuller, thank you so much. And for the callers, thank you so much. And if I accidentally interrupted Mr. Fuller, it wasn't intentional. It was purely an accident, but he is just so full of wisdom. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, caller. TalkTainmentRadio.com.